I'm Sarah Vaya. I'm a professor and climate extension specialist at University of Maryland in College Park. And we're going to talk about soil today. I have a confession to make. I didn't know much about soil until about 5 years ago. And before that time, I always thought, oh, soil, really boring, because the only thing I'd ever heard about soil was all about sort of soil chemistry and typical sort of soil science stuff. And as most of you know, I'm a biologist, and I didn't find that very interesting. But once I learned something about soil and realized how important the biology is, I was amazed how interesting it was. And I'm hoping to share some of that with you today. This will also feed into the next two webinars, Regenerating Landscapes and Regenerating Agriculture. And both of those require healthy soil. So let's just carry on.
Sarah, are you recording?
I am recording. I thought
Okay.
I was. I'm recording. Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Before the Europeans came, we had native forest. Obviously, these are recent pictures, right? So this, in fact, is the Joyce-Kilmer National Forest in North Carolina, a beautiful place. So we had forest and we had prairies, and the soils in both of these habitats were in peak condition, okay? The prairie plants have very deep and very dense roots, and over years and years and years and hundreds of years and more, they made 3 to 4 feet, right, feet of very rich topsoil. And I have to show this picture because I really love what Dr. Jerry Glover did. He allows us to visualize the root system of some native prairie plants. And what he did was he took a couple of 55-gallon drums and cut out the bottom of one or two and filled it up with a growing medium and put in some seeds of various prairie plants, these compass plant, big blue stem, and Indian grass, and let them grow. And then he essentially took out the growing medium and pulled out the roots. And what you can see is not only, he's like 6 feet tall, not only are the roots maybe 9 feet deep, tapering down here, but they're really dense. And later on, when I talk about how roots exude a lot of sugary substances to feed microbes in the soil, you can imagine how much how much sugar and good stuff will come out of the very dense roots in these plants. So this is one reason there's so much topsoil in undisturbed prairie. So when the soils were at good condition, there was great stormwater infiltration, of course. Then the European colonists came and they began converting native forests and prairies to agriculture. And since that time, agriculture has been focused primarily on yield, increasing yield. And soil health has really not been a priority and has kind of gone by the wayside, as we'll see in a moment. And so in 150 years of this approach, half the organic matter in the prairie soils is gone. And prairie topsoil now is only, instead of 3 to 4 feet, it's only 6 to 8 inches, which is really a tragedy. And so we've lost a lot. Okay, so modern agriculture, again, focused on yield, is doing a very bad number on habitat and biodiversity, reducing both of those and degrading the soil. And a large part of this is because this will be such a familiar landscape to most of you, I'm sure, who've driven by farms, almost all of which, that's not true, most of which still, even commodity farms, still use tillage. So tillage leads to wind and water erosion and big time loss of organic matter. And I'll explain why that happens in just a minute. But when there's water erosion like this, okay, you see these big gullies forming, soil eroded by water, you can even see it here, develops a crust, and here's a closer up picture, and which, as you can see, can hinder germination. It also reduces water infiltration, and because of that, it reduces the ability of the soil to purify the water, which I'll discuss a little bit more in a moment. Also, when we have this kind of crusting thing going off, that just progressively increases runoff, which just continues to cause erosion. And a lot of runoff also causes water pollution from fertilizer and chemicals, which washes off with the soil. And when we have this kind of thing, it increases flood risk because we're getting a lot of runoff instead of soaking into the fields. Wind erosion. This is a good picture of wind erosion. Of course, it also reduces organic matter. It's blowing the topsoil away, and it can spread pathogens. So pathogens like valley fever can be spread by, which is a fungus, can be spread by blowing dust like this. Okay, winter fallow, that is leaving fields empty over the winter after tillage, also increases erosion. There's months and months of water coming down for erosion, runoff, and water pollution. So this is just a quick overview, and I'll talk about each of these in more detail a little bit later. Okay, let's talk about some basics of soil now. Soil is Earth's second largest ecosystem. First largest, the ocean, right? So healthy soil performs crucial ecosystem functions: water filtration and storage. You might not think of soil as filtering the water, but that's exactly what happens when it rains and water percolates down through good, healthy soil. Stable soil aggregates, and I'm going to show you some pictures and describe what this means. Soil aggregates allow water to soak in, okay? They also resist erosion. They can hold water for the future use of plants if the rain is not coming along. They provide physical filtration of the water, and soil microbes also live in there and around there. And soil microbes can metabolize contaminants like pesticides even, okay? So healthy soil allows the water to be, cleaned up in a way that wouldn't be possible otherwise. Healthy soil also allows nutrient cycling, which is a sort of bio jargon phrase, which just means the decomposition of dead things, dead plants and animals, by soil organisms. Some microbes, some invertebrates, which chew up the remains. This decomposition process makes the nutrients that were in the organisms when they were living available to the plants to take up as they need, nitrogen, phosphorus, etc. And also soil provides habitat for a large community of soil organisms, zillions, well, not zillions, right? Hundreds of thousands of species of microbes, probably at least thousands, and a lot of invertebrates. So healthy soil is very biodiverse, and this diversity, this is sort of a kind of, I would say true fact, but that just means commonly accepted in ecology that diversity stabilizes ecosystems. So this is kind of a basic outline. But as I said, excited as a biologist, 90% of these ecosystem functions are driven by the organisms, okay? Even these aggregates are built by the organisms. So that's a kind of key fact. All right. When we have a healthy soil, we have a healthy soil ecosystem, and it harbors a very diverse food web. So here's a picture, common picture just off the web, and it shows you all the sort of visible organisms, the macroscopic things like worms that you might, think about. And here's like maybe a little beetle larva or something. Now there's a vertebrate, a mole, and there's some other little stuff, mites and nematodes and stuff like that. And then there's things that you really can't see very much of. Also, there's root nodules on plants. We'll talk about these in a moment. What are the most abundant soil organisms? Microbes, okay? You might be able to see those earthworms, but there are so many more microbes that you are not seeing. So some of you have seen this slide before. I love this cover of Scientific American from 2012, I think, Your Inner Ecosystem. And the subtitle is, In Your Body, Bacteria Outnumber Your Own Cells 10 to 1. Who's in control? Okay. So for those of us who think we're in control, we're really not. Okay, so here are these microbes. I love this picture also because I think it really evokes what most people think about bacteria and fungi, a bunch of hooligans that are just going to harm us, basically. But there are so many more friendly microbes than there are unfriendly ones. And the friendly ones, in our body, for example, battle the unfriendly ones all the time. So we've got tons of bacteria on our skin, which are sort of providing a nice layer to keep other harmful stuff out. So microbes are crucial for a healthy body and healthy soil. Now, 1 teaspoon of soil, this is a heaping teaspoon, contains more than 1 billion individual microbial cells, okay? Fungi are multicellular. Most of the ones I'll talk about multicellular, but 1 billion microbes. The amazing thing is, plants they've got their leaves out and they're photosynthesizing, right, in the sun and making sugar. And most of us, I know, I used to think this, most of us think, oh, well, they're using this sugar to make fruit or, to build their body, their bodies grow leaves, more leaves, et cetera. They're using the sugar for that. Amazingly, plants give up to 40% of the sugar they make in photosynthesis to soil microbes. They pump it down there to the roots. They don't store it. It spews out into the soil and the microbes eat it. And, they're not just doing this to be nice. They're getting something for this, right? And in return for all this sugar that they're providing the microbes, they get nitrogen, water, other nutrients. Nitrogen's a nutrient, of course, phosphorus, et cetera, another nutrient. Protection from disease. I'll tell you a little bit about that. Protection from predators and a lot of protection from abiotic stress. Abiotic stress is stress from things that are not biological. So like heat and flooding and drought, et cetera. That's abiotic stress. I'll talk a lot about sort of 3 different groups of things. Nitrogen fixing bacteria. Nitrogen fixing, I'll just describe what that means in a second, but nitrogen fixing bacteria live in little nodules like this on plant roots. And I'll tell you a lot more about them in a minute. Mycorrhizae are fungi, multicellular fungi, and they are super important in the soil ecosystem, and I'll talk a lot about them. And then I'll talk about some other bacteria which help plants out. And here's a really great example. You might be able to see this is the root here, sort of reddish, and this green stuff around the edge is a big layer of one species of bacteria that sort of gloms onto the root. And this is what I mean. It protects the plant from invasion by, say, pathogenic fungi and even to a certain extent nematodes, et cetera. And so this is what they call a plant growth promoting bacteria. I'll talk more about that in just a minute. So we're going to start out talking about nitrogen fixation, and Rhizobium is the main genus of bacteria that does this, okay? So this is the main nitrogen fixing bacteria, and these are on legumes, which are like bean plants. Alfalfa is a legume, clover is a legume, obviously beans are legumes. And these bacteria take nitrogen, N2, 2 nitrogen molecules, out of the air, 2 nitrogen atoms, out of the air, and they make ammonia, okay? And that's NH3. And from ammonia in soil, ammonium, which is the big ingredient in fertilizer, is made with the help of some other bacteria. So these nitrogen-fixing bacteria live in these nodules on roots, okay? And the plant makes these nodules for the bacteria, and the bacteria move in, and then they're sort of at home. And the plant then is protecting them from vagaries of being just out there in the soil. You can see a cross section of a root here, and here's a whole bunch of, these are the nodules, whole bunch of bacteria crammed into these nodules, okay? I took this picture after pulling up a pea plant from my garden because I had added some commercial inoculant to help with supporting nitrogen fixing bacteria. And I wanted to know whether there really were any nodules on my pea plant. And, here they are. And so I was, feeling fairly happy that some nitrogen had been, released for the plant to use, and then some is also released into the soil. So you can buy these commercial inoculants to add to a row of beans or whatever, soybeans or whatever you plant in your garden, or if you plant a cover crop of, say, red clover, you can add an inoculant to that. Okay, so that's that. Mycorrhizae are fungi that colonize plant roots. Okay, and here's this is a great picture. Obviously, a cover of a book. Here's a little conifer seedling, okay? And here are the roots of that seedling, okay? And the rest of this white stuff, not roots, mycorrhizae, okay? So these filamentous parts of fungi are called hyphae. These filamentous parts of the mycorrhizae extend out into the soil. And if you look at this close up here of this grain plant, here's a little root, and on its own, the root can only use phosphorus from a very, very thin area right around the root. But the mycorrhizal fungi grow into the plant, and they sort of inhabit root cells, and then they grow way out away from the plant. They expand the root area up to 700 times, okay? So they're really helping the plant out by sending these hyphae, these little filaments, way out there to pick up water and nitrogen and phosphorus, and then they bring it back to the plant. Now, what do the mycorrhizae get out of this? The plant gives them sugar, both while they're in the roots, and the plant exudes sugary substances. But the mycorrhizal parts that are in the root are sucking up some of the sugar from the root cells also, and a lot of it more from the surrounding area. So when the plant has these mycorrhizae that extend way out there like that, of course, that's going to increase drought tolerance because the plant's got a way to get water that's over here to the roots. And also it reduces the need for fertilizer because the mycorrhizae are picking up nutrients for the plants, nitrogen and phosphorus, that otherwise would have to be supplied in fertilizer if it's a crop. And the interesting thing is up to 90% of all land plants have mycorrhizae. And another really, I thought this was very cool, is I read that the colonization of land by plants, okay, so plants evolved in the ocean and from algae and complicated, right, all that stuff. But the land is a very different environment than the ocean. It's hot, it's dry. We've got a problem. Plants aren't just bathed in nutrients like the algae are in the ocean. There's a problem. The plants have to get these water and nutrients. So it's now, I think, fairly well accepted that the evolution of these mycorrhizal fungi actually facilitated the evolution of land plants by helping them get these water and nutrients that they so easy to get in the ocean, but not that easy to get on land. So I think that's extra cool. Okay, now other benefits of mycorrhizae. This is the one panel from a figure in this paper that I read, and here's one plant, okay, and there's a bunch of insect pests land on it, and they start to eat it or chew it up or suck the sap or do something, and the plant is alerted to this, and it sort of sends up materials that ward off these insects. So that's what these little yellow things are. So, these are called allelochemicals. Chemicals that have a negative effect on another species. And a lot of plants, of course, generate these defensive chemicals. But the cool thing in this picture is that this plant also sends a signal down through the roots and then through the mycorrhizae. I don't know exactly how that happens, but through the mycorrhizae to an adjacent plant. And this signal says, look out, there's these invaders over here. So you better start generating some defensive chemicals. So this plant starts generating these chemicals, and then off they go. This is a parasitoid. This would attack these guys, but off the herbivores go. So this is one of my favorite pictures of all time from, I think it's a 2016 edition of the New Yorker. And the title of the paper is called The Secrets of the Wood Wide Web. So, okay, World Wide Wood Wide Web. And this cartoon is basically showing mycorrhizae with, taking messages around to these different plants. And that's exactly what happens. The message, there's not these little messengers, obviously, but the messages are chemical signals that are sent to adjacent plants. The other thing is the mycorrhizae can also transfer water and nutrients to other plants, okay? And if you've ever read this fabulous book called Finding the Mother Tree, Suzanne Simard, I think is her last name. I might have gotten the name wrong. Forester in Canada discovered that big old growth trees send water and nutrients to little saplings through mycorrhizae. And so it's a really great book if you haven't read it. Okay, signaling. There's two other things that I want to tell you about. Mycorrhizae can boost pollinator visits. So here's a plant with a bunch of mycorrhizae. And this plant has larger flowers, or more nectar. And this gets the pollinators all excited. And of course, that's going to help this plant. And the final example is soil near plants with mycorrhizae. So here's a plant with a lot of mycorrhizae. Often has better soil aggregation and increased water retention. So that's a good thing. This little plant over here doesn't have as many mycorrhizae and it doesn't have as much water or soil aggregation around it. So the mycorrhizae are helping the plants signal one another. They're boosting pollination by allowing the plants to make more flowers or have more nectar, and they're helping with soil aggregation and water retention. All right. I want to just tell you a little bit about a unicellular fungus, one cell. It's a little, here it is, one cell, a little round fungus like this. And these, they're called endosymbionts because they live inside the plants, okay? They enter the plants through the root cells and then they colonize these root tissues. And you can see down here, there's a layer of these single-celled fungi on the outer, exterior part of the root. So, this picture shows the results of an experiment with a really cool endosymbiotic fungus called Piriformospora. They just changed the name, Piriformospora indica, found in the Indian desert in 1997. It turns out that this single-celled fungus has a really wide host plant range. It will be able to get into the roots of a lot of different plants, and it does a lot of different things. It boosts the growth. It increases tolerance to insect pests. This particularly increases tolerance to salt, heat, okay, and disease. So here's an experiment where the experimenters grew up a bunch of these grasses in pots, and to some of the pots, to all of the pots, they added fusarium, which is root rot, and to half of the pots, they added this endosymbiotic fungus, Piriformospora indica. Okay, the plants that did not have the endosymbiotic fungus basically bit the dust, and the ones that had the endosymbiotic fungus, we don't know whether the one, what they would look like if they didn't have the disease, but they did a lot better than the ones that didn't have the fungus. So this is really a cool thing. And I read a few years ago that Monsanto, and which I think has become Bayer Health Science, Crop Sciences, something. I think they're trying to commercialize this so they can sell it to people, of course. But this is a very cool thing, and there are other endosymbiotic fungi that also do cool things. All right, now. For all of these species that inhabit or sort of move into the plant, the nitrogen-fixing bacteria, the microsymbionts, and the mycorrhizae and the endosymbionts, they all have to move into the plant. And so the plant has to be okay with that, right? And so there's kind of an interesting interaction between the plants and these bacteria and fungi. So let's just first talk about the nitrogen-fixing bacteria. It's a little cartoon. Here's the plant root. And if the plant is in a place where it doesn't have enough nitrogen, it will send out a chemical signal, some flavonoids. And here are the bacteria hanging around out there in the soil. And once the bacteria pick up this signal, this chemical signal, then they create another chemical, which the plant picks up and the plant then sends out this little projection, a root hair, and the bacteria then sort of move into this root hair, okay? And so here we see a root hair that have the bacteria inside. And once the bacteria are inside, then the plant, obviously there's a lot of more signaling going on, but the plant then generates a nodule. And here are the bacteria inside the nodule. So these bacteria then utilize the air that's in the soil, and there's nitrogen in the air, and they take that nitrogen and basically turn it into ammonia. However, making a nodule like this is pretty costly to the plant, right? So if there's enough fertilizer already in the ground, for example, if a farmer has planted, say, corn and put down a lot of starter fertilizer, then the baby corn plants may, they don't decide, right? Okay, they may determine in some way that there's enough nitrogen out there, and they may not, set up any interaction with these nitrogen-fixing bacteria. Okay, so the interaction's reduced if there's already enough nitrogen from fertilizer. And if that happens, if the fertilizer suppresses the interaction, it might be too late to recruit any nitrogen-fixing bacteria later on if the fertilizer gets used up. Okay, and so then that can hamper the growth or the seed production or whatever of the plants later on. If they had been able to establish an interaction with the nitrogen-fixing bacteria at the beginning, they could be getting nitrogen all along, and then their growth would not have been hampered. So there's this, interaction, and it seems like, oh yeah, more fertilizer is good. More fertilizer is not always good. Okay, all right. This is the sort of parallel picture for mycorrhizae. Okay, so here's the root again. In this case, the root puts out a different chemical signal, and if there happens to be, some mycorrhizal fungus hanging around the soil, then they picks up that chemical signal and generates more chemicals, right? It's all chemical crosstalk down there. And the mic factor, really creative, right? The mic factor. And the plant root picks up the mic factor and then allows the fungus to grow into the root. Okay. Now, not just anything can grow into the roots. Plants try to block off, invaders in their roots. And so this facilitation is really important in order for the mycorrhizal fungus to come down and be able to inhabit these root cells. Okay. But again, giving sugar to the mycorrhizae, even though they're not building a nodule for it, is costly to the plant, right? And the fungus does pick up sugar in these cells. So just like the nitrogen-fixing bacteria, the interaction can be reduced if there's lots of phosphorus or nitrogen in the soil. Now, this can cause a problem, even if the plant has enough phosphorus and nitrogen. It can be a problem if there's not a big mycorrhizal network, because if there's a drought or reduction of water, there's no mycorrhizal hyphae out there gathering water up to bring back to the plant. So again, I've said before, it's really hard to know what will happen if you sort of do something to nature, right? If you put down fertilizer, would you think later on that maybe the ability of your crop to weather a drought would be affected? Most people would not think that, okay? So it's always important to be a little humble and realize that, even scientists don't understand pretty much everything, or they don't understand everything. And so it's hard to avoid unintended consequences. So it's just words of the wise. All right, now let's talk about some of these plant growth promoting bacteria, or often called PGBP, which I have to spell out every time. There's thousands of species of these things in the soil, and I have just going to give you two examples because I think these are extra cool. So this is an experiment again. In this experiment, I don't know exactly what plants these are, but the investigators grew up some plants, beans or something, grew up some plants in a bunch of, pots or drink cups or whatever, a whole array of these things. And then they infected all of them with this pathogenic fungus, Pythium root rot. I think I said Fusarium was root rot. That was wrong. Pythium is root rot. And so all of the experimental plants were infected with root rot, and half of them had some bacteria added, this soil bacterium Pseudomonas. Okay, so all the experimental plants got the disease. Half of them got these bacteria Pseudomonas. And you can see that the ones that didn't get the bacteria, their roots all rotted off. The roots don't look very good. The ones that got the bacteria still have a lot of root material. So this is a picture I included because I thought it was so fantastic. Of course, these are not the real colors. This is courtesy of Dennis Kunkel Microscopy. The bacteria are these rod-shaped things. They're colored yellow. The fungus is this, long coily thing, and it's green, okay? And so what happens is when you add these bacteria, somehow they inhibit the fungus. I don't know the exact mechanism of how they're doing that, but it is, clearly successful. Okay, so this bacteria protected these plants from root rot. Now, the next example is shows a mix of bacteria from healthy soil, collected from actual soil, protect cucumber from drought stress. Again, the investigator grew up a bunch of identical cucumber plants here in solo grain cups in some kind of growth mix. And half of them were inoculated with this mixture of these bacteria that they had isolated from soil. And half of them didn't get any of the bacteria. And then they went on vacation or were somewhere for 13 days and didn't water anything. So when they come back from their 13 days of not watering, the plants that got the inoculation of drought protecting bacteria look pretty good. The ones that did not get those bacteria and didn't get any water either are looking pretty haggard, okay? And so this is, again, a great example of how here, if you have healthy soil, you may, okay, I don't know if all healthy soil has this stuff, you may have these protective bacteria, but you will have a lot of plant growth promoting bacteria in that soil, okay? Now, farmers can either build healthy soil and protect their plants from drought with, sort of that, or they can pay Bayer Crop Science for their expensive drought guard corn. And they developed this corn, they bred this corn by breeding in some of the genes that are in these bacteria that protected the plants from drought stress, which I thought was very cool. So, you can bet that these, drought guard hybrid seeds are pretty expensive. And, hey, farmers might be able to very frequently get the same result if they just build healthy soil. But modern agriculture has degraded the soil so badly that we have to do stuff like this. Okay, now just to recap some of the microbial benefits. Soil microbes help plants grow. Okay, they help plants store carbon in the soil, and they boost water quality. So here are things that they do for the plants: provide nutrients, build the soil structure, defend plants from stress, sequester carbon. Also over here, and helping in the water realm, the soil microbes biodegrade a lot of chemicals. And I think I mentioned that soil microbes can eat essentially chemical pesticides, and they can control pathogens. And then healthy soil also filters the sediment in the soil, and they can adsorb. That means stick to, adsorb. Absorb means sort of suck up. Adsorb means stick to pollutants onto clays. Okay, who knew, right? But when you have healthy soil, you can, help clean up the water in several different ways. All right. And then just to finish this part of the talk, this is a complicated slide. I'm not going to talk about all of it, but it shows a lot of different sort of things that are going on to protect plants in the soil. So a strategy, if we can build healthy soil in our home landscapes, in our gardens, on our farms, then we can naturally occurring bacteria can promote plant growth, fight pathogens, moderate abiotic stresses like drought. Otherwise, if we don't have these, good bacteria and fungi in the soil, We need more synthetic nitrogen fertilizer because there's no, the plants don't have a bunch of mycorrhizae to help them get the nutrients. They may not have the nitrogen fixing bacteria. We need more pesticides and fungicides. Obviously, that's not that great for the soil. It's not that great for the water. It's not that great for people. We need more irrigation. Okay, all these things increase pollution, and irrigation, using a lot of irrigation, is going to reduce groundwater supplies, which are becoming more and more precious every year as we go forward. All right, now I want to turn a little bit and talk in more detail about what makes healthy soil. I didn't know this before I basically started studying about soil, but soil is about half water and air, 48%. Okay, and then there's a lot of mineral matter, another 45% of mineral matter. There's a little bit of organic matter. Okay, maybe 3% if you're lucky, 4%, maybe a little more. And then there's biota, that's the living stuff, a little bit. Okay, and so here's a cartoon which shows here's a root, there's a bunch of water down in between the soil, there's soil particles, there's air, there's organic matter, there's there's like invertebrates like springtails and pseudoscorpions running around in the air. There's little mites, and there's little worms and stuff. So it's really a lot going on down there that we never even think of, right? Okay, healthy soil. Healthy soil is crumbly. I think we all know it when we see it, right? You go out in your yard and the soil is dark, in your garden, say, your soil is dark brown, really dark brown, it's crumbly, and it just feels, good, right? It feels healthy. And in this crumbly soil, there's actually a lot of detailed structure. Okay, so healthy soil is made up of these things called aggregates, okay, little tiny soil particles that are stuck together. They're not just held together by roots or by mycorrhizal hyphae. They're stuck together by exudates, sugary exudates from the roots. Mycorrhizae also exude some sort of sugary, they're called glycoproteins, sugary proteins. And there's other sticky material like from earthworms and whatnot. And this sticks together, these little soil particles, into this characteristic structure called an aggregate. Okay. The aggregate provide crucial habitat. So here's a little part of it. There's a root, and maybe there's some mycorrhizae around it. Here's a mite. Here's a little close up, and there's some other stuff going on down there, some bacteria. These little things are little bits of organic matter. There's a nematode. Oh, so there's a segmented worm down there. That seems too big for that, but anyway, there's a little worm in there. So there's a lot of stuff going on in there. And the aggregates also do two other really important things. They mediate water flow. So when you have this crumbly soil that has these stable aggregates, which are stuck together with this glue, essentially, root exudate and mycorrhizal exudates, this stuff does not dissolve in water. And so these little particles hang together into these what called stable aggregates. There are pores in these aggregates. So when it rains, water comes down and it soaks in and it goes down through these pores and moves down until gets down far enough to join the water table. And so when you have healthy soil and you have this drainage thing, you don't wind up with a lot of standing water like this. This is a picture from a Eastern Maryland farm taken, I can't remember exactly the year, a few years ago, when there was 10 inches of rain in May, and there was just water standing around like this for a really long time. Which, if the water stands around for more than a day, you know that the soil is not very healthy because it's not soaking in. The other thing that the aggregates do is, and I drew these little dots in here, this is supposed to symbolize little bits of water held in spaces. I think you can sort of see that, maybe some little blue color down there. But there's little bits of water that are held in the stable aggregates. And that water can be tapped into by plants if there's a big drought. I don't know how many of you have ever noticed what corn looks like in a drought, but the the normally flat leaves of corn, that are sort of tall, roll up when it's really dry. And when they roll up, they stop photosynthesizing, because part of photosynthesizing is that they have to open up these little pores to let the carbon dioxide in order to turn it into sugar, but it also lets water vapor out. So when it's really dry, they roll those leaves up and they just shut down photosynthesis, which means the corn doesn't grow. But if you have healthy soil, which is holding a little bit of water, then, okay, for at least a little bit of time, there's water availability to maybe hold the plants over till the next rain. Okay, so aggregates mediate water flow and retention. They also protect some soil organic matter from microbial consumption in these little places that are sort of, this is just a drawing, but there are these places in the aggregates which are too small for the microbes to get into and chow down on this organic material. So they're protected. All right. There's a lot on this slide. If we were in person, I would be doing this soil demo, which is really fun. You get these containers and fill them with water, and then you suspend a clump of dirt from either healthy soil or terrible soil on some hardware cloth and let it sit there in the water. Okay, so here's the healthy soil. It looks kind of crumbly. Okay, it's not crumbly because it's still in place, but it looks kind of crumbly, as opposed to this is unhealthy soil, very fine particles, and you can see it looks sort of hard. When you take a block of this stuff and you put it in the water, it starts to fall apart right away and sink down to the bottom like this. When you take a bunch of this soil and you put it in the water, you can dry it first or not, doesn't matter. You put it in the water, it can sit there and look just like this, okay? Basically a few particles on the outside that are already loosened might fall to the bottom, but then it just sits there, okay? The water soaks up into it, but it doesn't fall apart because it has stable soil aggregates. This, no stable soil aggregates, and it just turns into a big lump of mud. And this is basically what a cartoon of what it looks like. If it rains, it's got a crust on the top and the water just runs off, right? Here, if it rains, the water infiltrates or soaks in, right? And then goes down to the water table. So healthy soil has good aggregates. Water soaks in, they are stable in water, water infiltrates and is held, whoops, go back. It's high in organic matter, so it's darker color than this. It tends to be lighter gray. And it needs few inputs because there's a lot of nutrients and stuff already in there, and there'll be bacteria and mycorrhizae to help the plants get the nutrients. Unhealthy soil, fine particles, it's hard looking, the crust forms, it falls apart in water, okay? The water runs off and then the soil quickly dries up, so the plants wilt. There's not very much organic matter. And so farmers need to apply a lot of fertilizer and chemicals because the plants really can't do very much for themselves, okay? All right, now, if you have degraded soil, how do you restore it? Well, mimic nature, right? The soil organisms know how to build soil, so just leave them to it and let them work. And this principle is basically enshrined in the NRCS, Natural Resources Conservation Service. That's the wing of the USDA that deals with soil. The NRCS sacred soil health principles are 4: limit disturbance, keep the soil covered, increase plant diversity, maintain live roots all year, okay? The first 2, limit disturbance, keep the soil covered. This protects the soil aggregates and the organic matter. I'll describe it more in a minute. The second 2, increase plant diversity, maintain live roots, feed and diversify the soil organisms. So when I talk about regenerative landscaping and regenerative agriculture, I'll be telling about strategies to implement these soil health principles so that you can take terrible soil and allow it to improve itself, basically. Okay, limit disturbance. So there's 4 things here: limit disturbance, et cetera. So we're going to go take them one at a time. Limit disturbance. The biggest disturbance is tilling. So here's a field that the guy is just, or person is just disked, okay, big disc, very violent, goes down about, I don't know, 16 inches, and turns the soil over and busts it up. Obviously, this is going to, reduce mycorrhizal diversity, because it's really starting to sort of tear up all the mycorrhizal hyphae. And I should have, put this up there first, but in order to get to a seed bed, this is what a really nice seed bed might look like. It might take, 5 to 7 passes of a tractor with different implements, during which time basically the soil gets pulverized, okay? And then about 16 inches down, do I have that? The bottom of the plowed area, there's a really compacted area. Okay, so this is all plowed up and kind of pulverized, and then there's this compacted area, and then there's just the regular soil down there. So when you have this kind of pulverized soil like this, it allows increased wind and water erosion, because a lot of times the fields are left like this with just bare soil. This has seed, this has been planted, but might be left like this for a long time, okay? And so when you have no plants growing on the field and it's been tilled up like this, it increases runoff and loss of fertilizer, nitrogen, phosphorus, which increases water pollution from the nutrients and also from sediment, and also from chemicals, anything that's been sprayed on there. Now, one thing that I've heard people say, gardeners and farmers, is that they till to reduce compaction. That's not really true, okay? Tillage does not really reduce compaction, and especially if the farmer is doing 5 to 7 passes to make the seed bed. There's heavy tractor going up and down, and then you've got these very fine soil particles, and they basically settle in, and I think it really increases the compaction, if anything. Certainly, this highly compacted area forms at the bottom of the plowed area. It's called the plow pan. In no-till, you contrast these two pictures. In no-till, you got plant crop residue on the surface. You've got roots, and maybe you got some earthworms and stuff. And down here's an earthworm. There's root channels. There's worm burrows. There's this structure, okay. And this builds up over time so that you get a lot of dead roots. Then they die. They contribute more organic material. Whereas in a tilled situation, you're just churning it up all the time. And that it really disrupts the whole soil ecosystem. Okay, tilling destroys the habitat. Obviously, if you're pulverizing this to this extent, it breaks up these aggregates, and organic material is released from these tiny spaces. Okay. And so you basically are pulverizing this thing. These aggregates are, ground up essentially. And this organic material now is released into the sort of bare soil. And the microbes are then able to eat it, okay? And okay, there they are eating all this released organic material. And then when they respire, which is like breathing, okay, you don't think of microbes breathing, but they respire, and they respire out carbon dioxide. So they take this stored organic material, which was perfectly happy and safe down there in the soil aggregate. This gets broken up, the microbes eat it, and they release a lot of carbon dioxide, which means there's less carbon stored in the soil. This is called, I don't know if it's really called this, but I call this aerobic erosion. Okay, it's not water, it's not wind, but it's definitely causing a loss of organic material. It reduces soil carbon and releases carbon dioxide. I subscribe to this periodical Strict Till Farmer and its companion No Till Farmer for quite a while, and I still get their daily news feed. And I read in this that one tillage pass can undo the soil benefits from 30 years of no-till. This story is about a guy who I think had rented his field or something, and someone by mistake came in and tilled it, and really wrecked this. All this, benefits that accumulated over these many, many years. Okay. Now, the next disturbance, limit compaction. Soil can be compacted by heavy equipment. Of course, here you can see, a lot of driving over a field with something very heavy. And this is the depth to which machinery of different weights can compact the soil all the way down to 2 feet in some cases, something really heavy. And so it's compacted by equipment, livestock. Okay, these guys weigh what, 2,000 pounds or something. I don't know exactly how much a cow weighs, but at least 1,000. And they're walking around, they're compacting the soil. And even repeated walking. I buy a lot of produce at the U-Pick place in Howard County called Dairyland Farms. And I was talking to the woman who runs the place, and she said that they had a lot of compaction in their strawberry fields from people walking up and down between the rows. And so they were planting some things to reduce the compaction over the summer. It's kind of interesting. Here's a little cartoon, non-compacted. Here's a soil particle, a little water around it, and then some air spaces. Here's compacted. Obviously, the soil particle can't be squished. The water can't be squished. So what gets squished is the air. And so now instead of having this air in here where, organisms can move around, where the, bacteria can sort of get nitrogen if they have any nitrogen fixing bacteria, it's all squished together. Okay, so it really kind of wrecks the soil habitat. And of course, it's going to reduce the infiltration of water because instead of a lot of air spaces here where the water can flow through, everything's all squished together. So compaction is not a good thing. All right, limit chemical disturbance, fertilizer, pesticides, fungicides. Synthetic nitrogen fertilizer increases nitrous oxide release, N2O. Release, which N2O is a very potent greenhouse gas, something like 350 times more potent per molecule than carbon dioxide. It reduces microbial diversity and redundancy. That if you reduce diversity, a lot of the microbes down there are doing sort of the same function. But if you reduce diversity, it reduces the redundancy. That is the number of different species that are doing the same thing. Now, this redundancy is a really good thing because if something, comes along like high temperature and some of the microbes die, there are other microbes there that can do the same job that might still be there. So when you reduce redundancy, you reduce resilience. It's harder to bounce back if you don't have as many species of microbe doing the same function, okay? Pesticides can harm soil invertebrates. Obviously, they're sprayed on the plants to get rid of the insect pests on the plants, but they wash down and they can harm soil invertebrates also. And fungicides can affect mycorrhizae and other beneficial fungi. So, here's kind of big ag at its best, right? A gigantic sprayer, huge monoculture of, obviously one thing, that's what monoculture means. And they're spraying, in this case, they're spraying fertilizer, but they can also spray insecticide like this. Here's pellet fertilizer being put down by a sprayer, and here's a home gardener putting down some synthetic nitrogen fertilizer. All right, keep the soil covered, number 2, to reduce erosion. Here's that picture again of wind erosion. Here's water erosion. This classic picture of a raindrop or piece of drop of water falling down 20 miles an hour. Raindrop hits the ground at 20 miles an hour. So that means if there's, you get a bunch of water flowing down, rain hitting, water flowing in a current like this, it's going to carry a lot of soil away. So you lose topsoil, which leaves a lot more clay. That's inferior growing medium. You get crusting and reduced aggregation, as I already talked about, reduced infiltration, increased runoff. So this is a picture from a study where people wanted to know something about runoff from a tilled field. So here's this big old tilled field. They put this like sort of channel thing here, and they can measure things in it. But you can see very clearly that the water coming out of here is muddy water. And what is that muddy water but topsoil coming off of this field, which is a great big loss. Here's a picture, basically without the benefit of this. Again, just showing these rivers of muddy water coming off after water erosion. And then when things dry up, you wind up with this crusty situation going here. So all this muddy water goes to streams and just then puts a lot of sediment in the streams, which is very hard on all the life in the stream. So this is not a good thing. If you keep the soil covered with, like, say, a cover crop in the winter, which again, I'll talk about more in regenerative agriculture, then you don't have these naked fields where stuff can, just blow away, or you don't have big places like this that are bare where water can just carry away the topsoil. Increase plant diversity. That's the NRCS principle number 3. And one of the best ways to do that is through crop rotation. that means, 1 year you plant one crop, the next year you plant another crop, a different crop. Excuse me. Let me just take a little drink here. So I used to live in Ithaca, New York, and there were a lot of fields like this there, where they would grow different crops in these strips, alfalfa, and then they would grow, other crops in between them. And they, grow them for a while, and then the next year or maybe after 2 years, they'd move it. And then this would be that, and then this would be that. Okay, so they'd progressively plant the different crops like that. So every year they'd have some of each crop, but they'd be in a slightly different place. That's crop rotation. Sometimes they move it, people, farmers move the crops to a different field. And that's really handy because it helps manage nutrients. So let's say they have alfalfa or clover or something here. That's a nitrogen fixing plant. It'll have the nodules on the roots. And so that will contribute nitrogen to the soil. And then the next year, maybe they'll plant, corn or something like that. Or they didn't have that many soybeans in New York, but soybeans also are nitrogen fixers. So you can follow soybeans with corn. Okay. And in fact, here's an example of a study where this is, I believe, in Iowa, where the investigators went to a bunch of different farmer fields and tracked the yield of corn based on, how much nitrogen had been applied per acre. Okay, so this is corn following corn, so no crop rotation. This is corn and soybean alternated. And what you can see here is that over all of the different nitrogen rates, the alternating plant produced a greater yield. But if you look at these two stars, that's where the two strategies have the same yield. And you can see that to get the same yield without rotating with soybeans, the farmers had to put a lot more fertilizer on. Okay, that makes total sense. If they just rotated it with soybean, they could put a lot less fertilizer on and get the same yield, or they could get better yield, okay, with the same amount of fertilizer. So that's how you read these graphs. Sometimes diseases, for example, or pests overwinter in the soil. And then in the spring, when everything, comes up, if the same crop is there, those pests and diseases just go ahead and infest that crop again, okay? But if you move that crop and put something else there where where the new crop is not attacked by the same pests, let's say Colorado potato beetles eat potatoes, of course. So if you have potatoes, you might get a lot of Colorado potato beetles. Now, I just thought of this, so I don't remember whether they overwinter in the soil or not. But let's imagine they do, or there's some pests that do. If there's potatoes again there next year, then there are the beetles. If they've overwintered, they come out and there's potatoes. Yay! But if there's corn there, the beetles come out and they're like, well, this isn't working. And so then, that sort of does them in. So that's the principle of controlling pests with crop rotation. Now that example might not be exactly right, but that's the principle of it. Same thing with disease. This is why they tell you not to plant tomatoes the same place year after year after year, because tomato diseases get in the soil and then I think those diseases are everywhere anyway, but then they come back and attack your tomatoes again. I already discussed this. Rotating legumes with other crops helps out. Cover crop mixes like this, that increases the diversity. And, plants put out sugars, et cetera, but they also put out other chemicals. And so the difference between the various plant species that are planted there makes a difference to the microbes. Okay, so having greater diversity of plants means you may have a greater diversity of invertebrates and microbes that are helping out in the soil. And then there's this cool thing called prairie strips, okay? I believe this is from a paper by a professor at Iowa. I think she won a MacArthur Award for this idea, the prairie strips. So here's soybeans, and then there's some more soybeans in the next field over here. These are planted between fields of corn, doesn't matter, but this is a bunch of native plants, native prairie plants planted in a strip, obviously prairie strip, and that dramatically boosts the number of pollinators. Now soybeans don't need to be pollinated, but having more pollinators in the region is basically good because a lot of crops do need to be pollinated. And of course, we want to keep good pollinator populations going in every place. The other thing is that these prairie strips, the soil in the prairie strips was so much healthier than the soil in these tilled fields that I'm not going to show you this picture, but these people had the same sort of, little funnel thing coming off the fields, and they could show that the water coming from the prairie strip area is much cleaner than the water coming from the tilled field. So kind of cool. But the bottom line here for plant diversity is when there's more plant diversity, there's more microbial diversity, and more microbial diversity, as I just said, means more resilience. Okay. Maintain living roots all year to feed those microbes. So roots exude or basically push out sugars and sugary proteins that feed the microbes. So here's a cool picture. Here's a root, and the investigators dyed the root exudate coming out purple. And actually, I think they might have dyed the bacteria purple. Somebody got dyed purple. And what you can see here is that in this little glob of exudate at the bottom of the root, there's all these bacteria just glommed over there, right? And so they're attracted to this sugary stuff, and they're just slurping this up and then, making more microbes out of it. The root exudates also contain chemicals that signal to the microbes, okay, and that fend off pathogens. So in this particular picture, it's just showing the attraction, but other studies show that they fend off pathogens. Without live roots in the winter to spew out the sugary stuff that feeds them, microbial populations, dwindle, okay? Now, the mycorrhizae make spores, and the spores can last for a few months, but they may not last all winter and may not be there ready to, turn back into a mycorrhiza hypha at the beginning of next year. So it's really useful to have living roots all winter. Now, this is whether it's your garden or a farm, it's useful to have living roots all winter. And one really great way to do that is to plant cover crops, which I'll talk about in the next webinars. Okay, now, I used to give a lot of talks on soil health, and a lot of people ask me, can you just add something to boost soil health? Can I just, add something? Or do I really need to do this complicated stuff, cover crops and no-till and whatever? And the answer is sort of, but not as much as you might think. Compost. Adding compost is a great idea. Not because adding compost adds useful microbes. Adding compost does not add useful soil microbes because compost gets hot. And when compost gets hot, microbes die, right? And so adding compost does not add useful soil microbes, although I've heard several people who should know better say that it does. Adding compost is a great idea because it has a lot of organic matter in it. So composted food or yard waste or composted manure is decomposed by microbes, and that feeds the plant. So the nutrients are released and it feeds the plant. And compost also increases the sort of texture of the soil, et cetera. So adding compost is great, but because it has a lot of organic matter. Now, adding biosolids, no, gardeners don't do this, but farmers use biosolids from waste treatment plants. I used to think this was a good idea. Now I know it's a really bad idea because although these biosolids add organic matter, they also add these PFAS, those little, I was going to look this up, polyfluorinated somethings. They've been in the news, so everybody knows what PFAS are, and they're really not very good for you. But they also add these pharmaceuticals because pharmaceuticals are eliminated with, bodily functions, and also people flush a lot of pills, which is a bad idea, but they do it anyway. So biosolids contains these pharmaceuticals too. So not a good idea. I was happy to find that biosolids are not allowed in organic agriculture. Another reason that I usually buy organic fruits and vegetables, and because I don't like pesticides or fungicides on my food either. But this is another good reason. Now, if you read any soil sort of literature at all, you'll read about these biostimulants. And these are commercial mixtures of soil microbes that are added with the idea that they will help boost the soil microbial population. Now, nitrogen-fixing bacteria, usually you have to add these because most of the time soil will not have had a legume growing on it last year, and so there won't be very many microbes that nitrogen-fixing microbes sitting around in the soil. Okay, so you usually have to add that. So you can add, gardeners might add burpee booster, farmers would add maybe some other kind of inoculant. Those are a good idea. Then there's commercial mixtures of mycorrhizae or plant growth promoting bacteria. There's some indication these might work, but most of the time I think people think they don't work. And one of the sites I looked at was it was this one. It was from Washington State, problem with soil inoculants, showed this picture under the heading, native microbes eat invaders. I love, right? A picture you'll never see in the Serengeti, this little puppy down there. But the idea is if you add, here are two pictures of different commercial products, Great White and Mycosupreme, both for mycorrhizae. If you put in these sort of foreign microbes, the ones that are already in the soil, first of all, they're probably adapted to the area because they've been living there, but they're also established. And so they typically, according to these people from Washington State, typically outcompete the microbes you add pretty quickly, okay? Unless the soil is just terrible and doesn't have any microbes in it at all, then, this is maybe better than nothing. But if you have moderately healthy soil, it's probably better to just build up microbes that are already in the area. So they may or may not work, and they may or may not persist. But here's a couple of things you can read if you'd like to learn more about this. I'll send the slides, and these links will be hot, so you can go look that up. All right, now, I'm sorry, I'm really running late here. This is I think the last slide. Maybe you're interested in knowing how healthy the soil in your garden or on your farm is. And if you are interested in that, you can use the Maryland Soil Health Card. Now, there probably are soil health cards for other states, but this is the one for Maryland. This is actually an older version, which I think is a little easier to understand. But the idea with the soil health card is it's a do-it-yourself method for evaluating soil health. All you need is a shovel, a wire flag, one of those long flags, piece of wire with a little plastic thing on the end to poke into the soil, and a little bit of water. So there are various indicators, and you can sort of do the little experiment. There are complete instructions. You can go to this link there and read about it, but I'll just give you the idea here. So let's say you want to know about earthworms. Well, if you go out there with your shovel and you take a shovel full of soil and you find 0 to 1 worm in the top foot of soil in one, regular shovel full, and you don't have very good soil. 2 to 10 in a shovel full, medium. More than 10, lots of holes in the tilled soil, birds if you till. A lot of times farmers who are tilling are followed by birds because a lot of stuff gets kicked up. But if you go out there and you find a ton of earthworms, you have pretty good soil. Organic matter. The color is important. If you dig your shovel full and maybe you go down, a foot, the topsoil color is similar to the soil underneath that. You don't have very good soil. If the surface soil is sort of close to the subsoil, but a little bit darker, it's medium. If the topsoil is clearly defined and darker than the subsoil, it's good. Okay, so the topsoil should be dark because it has more organic material in it. The subsoil doesn't have as much organic material, so it's going to be lighter in color. Roots and residue. If you don't see any organic residue or roots, bad soil. Some residue, few roots in your shovelful, better. Noticeable roots and residue, good soil. Subsurface compaction. If you take your wire flag out there and you can't get it in to the, you can't even push it in, okay, or the wire bends, then your soil is really hard and it's not very good. Medium, you have to push hard. You might need your fist to push in the flag. Good, you can just put your fingers and push it in. It's going to go in really easily. Soil tilth and melanas. bad soil looks dead, and that's really true. Bad soil looks dead, like a brick. Okay, and if this is a piece of machinery, a grain drill, but if you till it, it's going to blow apart. Okay, medium soil, somewhat cloddy. It's rough. It's hard to pull through the seed bed. Good soil, cottage cheese, crumbly. You can slice through like cutting butter. I think it's hard to feel spongy, but that's what they say anyway. Erosion, bad soil, large erosion gullies. Large erosion gullies. Medium soil, not too many gullies. They don't really hook together, etc. And no erosion gullies in good soil. Water holding capacity. Plants start to stress out in 2 days after a good rain in bad soil, but good soil holds water for a long time, but it's not puddling, okay? Because the water is infiltrating, okay? Here, the water in bad soil, the water just sits around and, forms ponds and is not draining. It's just basically evaporating. So this is kind of fun to go out in your yard, or if you're a farmer, you're probably already doing that. Now, this is the last slide. There's a lot of information about how much carbon is sequestered in healthy soil. And this is really an important natural climate solution. Storing carbon that was removed from the air by plants, stored in the roots, stored in the soil by, putting sugar out through the roots. And there's going to be a lot more. I'm going to talk about this a lot more in the next one on the next webinar, July 17th, regenerative landscaping, and the one on August 28th on regenerative agriculture. Most stored carbon comes from the roots and has been processed by microbes. And basically, a lot of the stored carbon is little dead pieces of microbes. So any practices, healthy soil practices that boost microbes will increase carbon storage. So I had a lot of fun for a couple of years. This took me way longer than it should have. But I wrote this big report called Increasing Soil Health and Sequestering Carbon in Agricultural Soils. It was published in 2021. You'll be able to get a link to that. The first chapter tells you a lot of the kinds of information I discussed today. And then the rest of it is basically what strategies can farmers use to build healthy soil. And then there's, ways that farmers can be encouraged to start using these strategies. So that's kind of interesting to read if you like that kind of stuff. Okay, so that's the end. I have run over, but I'm happy to stay a little extra and answer questions.